All right, good evening, everyone. So I want to start by asking three questions, and those are why, what, and when. And I want to start with the why. And we'll get into this with a show of hands. I want to ask all of you to think for a second about how you got here to UVA Law. And I'm going to ask a question and then ask for a show of hands at the end of this question. But I would encourage you to wait until I'm at the end of this question. This is often a thing we say to witnesses in trial, wait till I actually finish the question to answer. But wait until I finish this question. How many of you here got to UVA Law, whether it's as a 1L or a 2L or a 3L returning, through hard work, grit, sacrifice, and absolutely no help from anybody else? So then my second question is for a show of hands of how many of you got here because of help from someone who knew more about something than you did. So to me, that's why everybody is in this room right now. As a lawyer, by the time that you graduate from here, you will have a very special skill. And it's easy in the law to be cynical about that, right? Lawyers, we're antagonistic, we get in fights, sometimes we're kind of crazy. But it's easy to forget that when you go through this experience, you come out of it with a skill that people need day in, day out to help them with their very, very real problems and situations that they're confronting. And when I was thinking about this before coming here tonight, I thought about a question that I was actually asked in the interview process for this job. Which, by the way, interviewing for a job that's about giving people advice about interviewing, I do not recommend it. It's very, very meta. But in that process, I was asked, what would I miss most about the job I had being in public service for 15 years? And the answer that I gave, I was not prepared for it. No one had told me this was a question. I did not know that I was going to get it. But the answer I gave in the moment, I think, still rings true to me now, which is that I would miss, when I had a case, making whoever it was that I interacted with, who was not a lawyer, feel like I had done the best and most honorable job of fulfilling the position that I had in that case. And if I did it well, that would include the witnesses, that would include the agents that I worked with, and it would also include the people who were accused of the crimes that I brought as a federal prosecutor. If I couldn't walk out of that courtroom thinking I had done the best possible job I did for everyone, especially the non-lawyers, then I hadn't done it right. And I know that I will miss that feeling of having the feeling that I had done it well. I feel strongly about the fact that I think every single person in this community can do something for public service. I feel strongly about that because as someone who is adopted, I know well the impact that people can have on you when they make choices to help you. And I know that sometimes that even extends to people you never meet and may never meet. All right, so that to me is the why. Why are you here? Every single lawyer, I think, has the ability to give something, whether that is full-time in public service, part-time in public service, in pro bono, or even simply supporting people in your family or close to you who go into public service. All right, so that's the why. What about the what? I think what is public service at UVA Law? Now, Kelly gave a very good overview. I'm going to give a few additional comments that layer onto that, simply to give you my perspective, especially as someone who's brand new to this. So for those of you who are 1Ls, I'm learning a lot of this at the same time. I'm asking what the acronyms are over and over again. All right, so I'm going to start with the team that I work with, the Public Service Center, and just give you my perspective about what it is that we are and what we do. Our job and our mandate, in my perspective, is to do everything we possibly can to get you all the jobs and the internships that you want and that will fulfill you to help people in the legal community. We will do that from the moment you step foot in this building until forever. If you're an alum and you come back, I was just emailing an alum right before I came down here talking about an interview that person has for a job next week and how we're going to help that alum through that process. So there's going to be a lot of it now, but we're here until whenever you later need help in your transition between different parts of your career. We have 5 people in our office that work on public service that I wanted to flag. The first, Andrew, are you here? Where's Andrew? Andrew, stand up. Andrew Broaddus is an assistant director in the Public Service Center that I wanted to flag. In some ways, he actually kind of runs the place. He was here when I was in law school, so he actually helped me with my questions, which, notwithstanding the fact that I think I've aged a lot faster, nonetheless is true that he was here when I was here. In addition to Andrew, we have 3 counselors who counsel our students. Amanda, where are you? All right, so Amanda Yale is back there by Andrew. Amanda has done, before she came here to the law school, she worked in legal aid, did child advocacy, and has an extensive depth of knowledge helping students with nonprofit work, legal aid work, and all of those, a lot of those areas, in addition to everything else, frankly. I go to her for advice all the time now. Dawn Davison is not here tonight. But she spent much of her career doing death penalty advocacy until the death penalty was abolished in Virginia. And then for her next chapter, she decided to come here and help more students go in to that and similar fields of public service. I've spent my entire career working for the federal government. I won't go through the alphabet soup of all the places that I worked, but I enjoyed every minute of it and all the people that I interacted with while I was there. And then lastly, the 5th person I did want to recognize, Tapley, where are you? She stepped out because, apropos of starting with Andrew, Tapley is a career development fellow in our office. She is a UVA undergrad. She actually supports all 3 of the career offices within the career development team. And she's the one who sort of actually makes things happen when an event like this goes on and will make sure that things don't get slipped between the cracks. I briefly, in terms of the Public Service Center, also want to acknowledge that there are 2 other parts of the Career Development Office that I want to flag for you all because they may end up being important, and I'll explain why. We also have the Office of Judicial Clerkships. In my opinion, judicial clerkships are a form of public service, and for many of you, they will be one of the best and most influential things that you do in your career. I'm a huge fan of them. I don't think it's all about just what grades you get. You can find the right fit with the right judge no matter who you are, so don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But we have a fantastic judicial clerkship office that will help you with things there. And also our Office of Private Practice. And you may say, well, how in the heck does that relate to public service? And I can tell you, I've already seen it. Because for some of you, it'll be a matter of saying, well, what's the place that I can go in private practice that will support my desire to give back to public service? Or you may, as a couple of students have already come in and asked, say, well, I want to do plaintiff's litigation, impact litigation, or I want to do something on the plaintiff side of firm work, but I don't quite know. I don't have those connections. And I've already walked down the hall to people in our other office and said, how do we get this student to the right place? And we've managed to find that. So don't sleep on the other 2 offices and what they can do for public service. In terms of beyond the PSC, I will try to keep this somewhat brief, but beyond the PSC, I want to flag pro bono. Andrew, in addition to doing public service, also helps with the pro bono, along with Assistant Dean Kimberly Emery. Everybody should do pro bono. I don't care who you are. I don't even care if you're not in this room. You should do pro bono work. It is the single best thing you can do to get a job, frankly, in the coming summers and years. But it is also something that you can do very quickly. You can do it on a short time frame, and you can make a huge impact while you do it. Also, by the way, if you're doing public service your first summer, you have to do pro bono if you want a grant funding for your summer. So please make sure to do it. PILA, Kelly gave a little bit of a description of what PILA did. I also wanted to thank Annie, Professor Kim, for her leadership of the Public Service Center for many years. There have been many people who have worked there, but I can tell you that I would not be here if it were not for Professor Kim. I don't think I would have applied for the job. I certainly don't think I would have gotten the job, and our team wouldn't be as strong as it was if it weren't for Professor Kim. Apply for that program in October if you're a 1L and you want to be in the program in law and public service, and pay attention to what they're doing. Lastly, in terms of what I did just want to say, don't forget about clinics and internships. As a 1L, that's probably not going to be a thing that you're going to be thinking about, but you're going to have a lot of pressure in public service sometimes to say, well, find the right job immediately. Don't forget that, yes, you'll have a summer job. Yes, you'll have another summer job. You'll have clinical opportunities and you'll have externships to fill out and round out if you're unsure. If you go somewhere and you're like, I didn't like that, that's a good thing, because then you're not going to end up there forever. But go and do a clinic, go and do an externship and find another opportunity. All right, so then in terms of when, the third question I asked, when should you be doing public service? Well, first, you're here, so you did step one. Second, come to our intro on Thursday at 11:45 a.m. in WB 152. It is mandatory if you want to get into the first wave of public service counseling, so please come. We'll give you some of the more nuts and bolts logistics at that meeting. I believe that public service is the best 1L summer job for everyone. Our other offices will probably say that theirs is the best, but that I'm the public service one. But please come in case you're interested in that being the opportunity for you. Third, there are 5 Real Deal panels that Kelly mentioned. We will have a series of panels in September. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I'm not going to tell you the dates. You couldn't possibly remember them if I did. Fourth, we'll have Federal Government Career Day in late October. And so for those of you who look at our panels and you're like, well, I really like the FTC, but you didn't have anybody from there. I think we do have somebody, but we'll see. But I really like this agency or that agency. Keep an eye on Federal Government Career Day. We may have some people coming in that you will enjoy. And then finally, you probably got your first This Week in Public Service, or to use an acronym, I'm sorry, TWIPS. You will get that on a weekly basis, roughly, and that will give you what's going on. So if you forget, if you aren't paying attention right now, when you get to that point, you will be able to get that email, and it'll have more information about what's going on around grounds. So, and then finally, I wanted to introduce Dean Kendrick. Believe it or not, Dean Kendrick was a classmate of mine here at UVA Law. She was a few years ahead of me, but we were here at the same time, and I know that she is committed to public service. And I know this in part because in preparation for today, I actually went back in my email. And luckily, Kendrick is a unique enough name that I was able to find our early email exchanges. There are more than I care to admit. They paint her in a much more flattering light than me. For any of you who wonder about whether your questions or emails asking for help look silly, they do. But you're not alone. Mine did too. So I hope that she doesn't have any of them anymore, and I might delete them after this conversation. But I appreciate the help that she gave me back then, and I appreciate the support that she gives to this community now. And that's not just lip service. Dean Kendrick has been committed to pro bono work during her time here at the law school. One just recent example and somewhat high-profile example is that she worked with the Legal Aid Justice Center, which is one of the key legal aids in our community that many of our students will work with, as well as McGuire Woods, on a case that will be before the Supreme Court this term, I believe. It is currently Lackey v. Steny. Previously it was Steny v. Holcomb at the Fourth Circuit, but that was a essentially civil rights litigation case that established, I think, at least 2 different things that are important. One was about ensuring that people who bring civil rights cases can get the attorney's fees that will allow them to actually bring those cases in the first place. And also ensuring that individuals couldn't have their driver's licenses taken away by the Virginia government simply because they didn't pay court costs, because there's a bit of a disconnect between those, the remedy and the issue there. So she is committed to public service. I'm pleased to be starting my term here as an assistant dean with her as dean. And I very much appreciate everyone having the patience to listen to my comments, and I encourage you all to reach out to all of us.
Thank you so much, Dean Faulkner, for that kind introduction. I have no memory of those emails. I hope I was competent, nice, and everything we want all of our students to be, because I don't remember at all. But that really means a lot to me, and it's thrilling to me to have you back at the law school. And it's thrilling to me to see all of you here. This is literally standing room only. I could not be more excited about that. I want to say briefly thank you. In addition to Dean Faulkner, thank you to Kelly Scrivener, Alfia Roon, Carter Farnsworth, Rose Blackwell, and all the other organizers, as well as everyone from PILA, the Program in Law and Public Service, and the Public Service Center who have helped make this event happen. I'm very, very grateful that we can all be here together because of your work. All right, show of hands, how many of you are 2Ls or 3Ls? All right, how many of you are 1Ls? Okay, so 2Ls and 3Ls, I want to thank you for being here. You're here before your classes have even begun to welcome the 1Ls and to demonstrate the importance of public service to you and to the law school, and for that, I thank you. And to the 1Ls, it's amazing to see so many of you here. You have a lot on your plate right now. You're learning how to do readings. You're getting settled in your new homes, and you're taking the time to be here. And that's just wonderful. And not to add more to your plate, but something that you will think about soon if you haven't already is what you want your legal career to look like. Some of you have an idea about that and you want to get moving. Some of you are still figuring it out. And as Chris Kavanaugh said at orientation, both of those things are okay. Those are both perfectly fine places to be. But whatever shape your career takes, public service can be part of your future, and public service should be part of your future. Because serving the public, lawyering in the public interest, is a responsibility and a privilege that all lawyers share. By being here today, you're signaling that on some level you already have figured that out. You already know that that is part of your future, and you want it to be. And by coming here and hearing from all the speakers you'll hear from after me, and meeting so many people from the Public Service Center, from LPS, from PILA, you're making public service part of your present. So many people in this room are ready and eager to help you engage in public service in law school and to work through how it will fit into your future. Just look at who's here this evening. Students, alumni, administrators, faculty, all who consider themselves part of our public interest law community. Again, I believe public service is a keystone of the legal profession, one of its highest callings and its broadest because it belongs to us all. Our public service programs are a critical part of what we do at the law school. And that's both in our identity as a public law school generally and at this law school specifically. We're so glad to have all of you here. We're so glad you chose UVA. And we're excited to support you while you're here and, as far away as it seems now, in the future, after you launch your career, as you follow all the different parts of your path. Public service will be part of your future, and we're here to get that started today. It's now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening. Terica Redfield Gansey is the Executive Director of the Southern Center for Human Rights. Terica leads SCHR in its fight for a world free of mass incarceration, the death penalty, the criminalization of poverty, and racial injustice. Terica spent most of her legal career at SCHR, first spending 9 years as a staff attorney representing clients on death row in Georgia and Alabama. She also served as the organization's development director, designing and leading SCHR's development strategy and building strategic partnerships. Also, she served as deputy director, helping to coordinate SCHR strategy and programs. Terica holds an LLM in trial advocacy from Temple University Beasley School of Law, a BA in English and Humanities, summa cum laude, from Tougaloo College. And I'm proud to say, like you and me, her legal education began right here at UVA Law, where Terica earned her JD in 2002. And we've been trying to figure out if I met her when I was an admitted student. So there's possibly a chain running all through the people that you are hearing from. While a student here, Terica was a member of the Raven Society and the Student Bar Association, president of the Black Law Students Association, and editor on the Virginia Journal of Social Policy and the Law, and most directly relevant to her career that's followed, the capital cases director of the Pro Bono Capital Assistance Project. In addition to her work at SCHR, Terica has served as the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers Death Penalty Resource Council, providing training and resources to capital defense attorneys throughout the nation. She also currently serves as Vice President of the Center for Death Penalty Litigation's Board of Directors, a member of the State Bar of Georgia's Professionalism Committee and its Seeking Equal Justice and Addressing Racism and Racial Bias Committee, and as a member of the Judicial Council of Georgia's Access to Justice Committee. She's also the immediate past president of the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys. Since the very start of her legal career in this building, through both her work and her volunteer service, Terica has worked to transform the criminal legal system. There's so much for us to learn from her about affecting change, both system-wide and on behalf of individual clients. I am delighted that Terica is with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming her back to the law school.
Good evening, everyone. I am so thrilled and honored to have been invited to be here giving this talk to you this afternoon. I loved UVA. It took me a year to start saying we, because it was so much out of my wheelhouse. I attended a historically black college, so and it was 800 students, and so coming to a law school that was much bigger, it took some adjustment for me. And I must say that UVA allowed me to be authentically me, and I will always, always appreciate that. Thank you, Carter, for the invitation and for buttering me up to get me to come here. You should have read his letter that he wrote to me about how fabulous I was. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Charlottesville is so beautiful, and I hope that you do something different than I did, which was I didn't really appreciate how beautiful it is here until I graduated from law school, because you're so busy studying and doing all the things. But I do hope you will take the time to breathe, to look at the leaves as they fall in the mountains and things like that. Because as I was driving from the airport to my hotel today, I kept thinking, wow, it's almost unfair that people get to live here. It's just so freaking pretty. The last time I was here, I don't get to come back often, but the last time I was here was for my 20th class reunion, and I got to participate in the portrait unveiling of the great, esteemed Elaine Jones. I also was, I was really proud to be in the same space with her. Because she has done death penalty work, she has been somebody that I've looked up to for a long time. And in that same trip, I was able to also get to introduce myself and hang around Federal District Judge Carlton Reeves, a fellow Mississippian, who I'm also so proud of. I was at the law school celebrating my 20th anniversary class reunion, dancing and twirling and doing all the things, but I also was stargazing because I felt so proud to have been a part of an institution that could produce such amazing legal advocates and scholars. And so I'm absolutely thrilled to be walking the halls again. I must brag and say that you will see my name on one of those plaques back there for the Mortimer Kaplan Public Interest Fellowship. I'm so tickled. I'm going to take a picture and send it to my mom, and I'm going to brag to my kids, too. So you are my kind of crowd. Not just because you made the same good decision that I did in choosing the University of Virginia School of Law, but also because you are choosing, as I did, public service. As you know, I have the privilege of serving as the executive director of the Southern Center for Human Rights, a nonprofit law firm that for nearly 50 years has worked for equality, dignity, and justice in criminal legal systems in the Deep South. And I am proud to say that we fight for the people we serve in the spirit and with the tenacity of our ancestors. The grit and determination of people who face seemingly insurmountable odds, but whose internal fire for justice compelled them to fight on. At SCHR, Our superpower is making the impossible possible. We are used to uphill battles. We know that we may not win every fight against injustice, but we are committed to fighting anyway, because we cannot and we will not stand idly by. And I am immensely, immensely proud to have been a part of the Southern Center for nearly 20 years. My journey to public interest into the Southern Center started at Tougaloo College. Lots of people haven't heard of it, but it's a small 800, I think it was 800 at the time, historically black college in Mississippi. And I chose Tougaloo College because I was interested in awe of its civil rights history. I wanted to be a part of a college or a university that was brave enough to stand against injustice and inhumanity when doing so could have had grave consequences. Tougaloo was a safe place for civil rights leaders and students who engaged in the movement, and I was proud to join that legacy. The summer after my junior year, I applied for and received a fellowship with the American Bar Foundation. It was a summer research fellowship for undergraduate students, and it still exists today. And it was designed to immerse diverse students who were interested in law and social policy. We were paired with fellows, American Bar Foundation fellows, who were conducting research in various aspects of the law and social policy. And I happened to work with a professor who was studying the Cook County Police Academy. She was studying what kinds of people would choose this as a career. What are some of their backgrounds? What does trauma look like as they're coming into this profession? And I thought, it was really fascinating work. We also got to visit and talk with judges. We got to tour the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office. But the thing that set me on the path that I am on today was a tour of the Cook County Jail. It was part of the program, and it was my first time being in a jail. And I immediately felt uncomfortable, not because I was afraid. I felt uncomfortable because it didn't feel right, that I was gawking at people in cages, and they didn't have the authority to tell me to look away. So that was the first thing that I noticed about that experience. And then the second thing was that as we toured the facility, I noticed that most of the people in that jail looked like me. And I thought, there must be something wrong here. But I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. And so, but the third thing, and the thing that really stuck with me, was that we were on that tour with some law students who were clerking at large law firms for the summer. And a couple of them asked the officers to make the people incarcerated fight for their entertainment. Sort of a gladiator situation, I would imagine. And I just was so struck by, so stunned by the inhumanity in that request and the boldness. I mean, have you no shame, right? With which it was asked. And I couldn't get the idea out of my head that these folks would soon be lawyers. And for good or otherwise, lawyers tend to have a level of power in our society. And if these young folks carried this kind of thinking around people who are incarcerated, and I thought, we're in trouble. So I came to law school, got accepted to the University of Virginia. I had never actually heard of the University of Virginia School of Law. That's how, let me see, how do I say? I don't want to say country. I had a lack of exposure, that's what I'll say. But one of my professors in college had gotten his PhD from here, and he said, I know you're going to apply to my alma mater. And I was like, oh, of course I will. So I did, and I got accepted, and I came up here, and this is an aside. I came up for Admitted Students Weekend. I took the Greyhound bus from Mississippi to Charlottesville. And guess what? I didn't think to have a place to stay when I got here. But fortunately, there were some student advisors, I think maybe what they called, and let me hang out at their house for the weekend. But I just kind of fell in love then with this, with not just because of the facilities were so pretty, but the people were so kind. I didn't imagine that law school could be a place where you would play softball, and they would have beer on Tuesdays. I don't even drink beer, but I like the idea that you would have beer. So I came to UVA Law School, and I took that experience from the Cook County Jail with me, and I kept thinking, I want to learn more about what this looks like. And so the summer after my first year, I was a research assistant with Professor Rutherglen. Yeah, you will know him. He's beautiful. He's a beautiful person. I love him. If he was here, I would say thank you to you, Professor Rutherglen, for always promoting me and supporting me. But that summer, I also volunteered at the Virginia Capital Representation Resource Center. And it was designed to, they were working on post-conviction capital cases. And so the first thing that they did was they sat a stack of transcripts about that high in front of me and said, Terica, find the issues. And I said, find the issues? I just finished my first year at law school. I don't know what the issues are. But, as I started reading through those transcripts, I noticed things that, hey, why didn't the defense attorney ask this question? Or why didn't we follow this lead? And so I started getting more and more interested in how the criminal legal system worked, particularly around capital punishment. And I worked with that organization throughout my tenure at UVA Law and got to have amazing experiences, like interviewing jurors who served on these cases. I went to one juror's door, and they had a sign up that said, with a gun, and it said, "We don't call the police." And I heard their big dogs barking in the background, and I thought, am I going to do this interview? But I did, and it was a good conversation, and we learned some things that were that we used in the defense. I also sat in a house with a witness where the house, inside of the house, I grew up in the South, obviously, so I'm not new to the Confederate flag, but it was an experience for me to be in this house trying to have a conversation with folks who had pictures of the Confederate flag all around their house. But the one thing that I remember about that is that they were kind. It was an experience that, taught me something about the human experience. The more I learned about the criminal legal system, particularly the death penalty, the angrier I became. I was outraged, wondering how could the legal system really just do this to people. It wasn't long before I decided that this was what I wanted to do with my career. And it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't easy for me to choose public interest because before I came to law school, I had no idea that there was a difference in the pay. I thought all lawyers were, fairly well off. I just didn't know. The lawyers that I had been around were like trial lawyers or whatever, and so that was the standard that I knew. And so when I told my parents that I was considering taking a $30,000 fellowship, after attending one of the top law schools in the country, it didn't go over so well. My parents loved me, but they were like, my mom specifically said, Terica, can you pay your tuition with love? Can you pay it with compassion? No, it takes M-O-N-E-Y. So her position was, you need to follow the money, ma'am. But I did not listen. And I didn't listen because I had another experience at UVA. I don't know if we still have it, but when I was here, there was a LLM program for judges. And one summer, I met Justice Susan Calkins on campus. She was in that LLM program, and I saw her sitting outside. I didn't know her, and I just decided, well, I'll go talk to her. And she made time for me. She talked to me about her experience joining legal aid, making probably $20,000. And she said to me, because I was telling her about my concern, feeling guilty around this idea that I'm the first lawyer in my family. People think lawyers are supposed to have a whole lot of money. I don't want to do this firm job even though I have a firm offer, because that just doesn't sit well in my spirit. But at the same time, I feel a sense of responsibility to give back to my family. And she said, Terica, if you do what you love, you will do it well, and everything else will come. And I believed her. I believed her because she was living proof of that for me. And she gave me the courage or the backing in some ways to choose myself. Even when it felt a little bit selfish, she reminded me that, we get one life to live, and we can choose ourselves. And so I could choose to be moved by the work that I do, or I could choose to be miserable, and I chose to be moved. So I took a $30,000 fellowship with the Fair Trial Initiative in Durham, North Carolina, working with expert trial attorneys defending people who were charged with capital murder. And after that fellowship ended, Stephen Bright, a legend in the death penalty community, hired me on as a staff attorney. And I came to the work, as I mentioned before, in anger, but I have stayed because of the love that I have for the people that I work with, the love that I have for the people, the communities in which we work, the love that I have for our clients. There's not enough money in the world that can equal going to visit your client and them telling you, you changed my life. Not because of something I did fancy in the courtroom, but because I said, I believe in you. There's just not a dollar figure that you can put on that. Having relationships with your clients where, my mom is asking him, how's he doing today? And tell him I said, hey. And he's doing the same thing about my parents because we're friends. And I took a former intern one time with me to visit one of my clients on death row. And we talked for hours about politics. And the former intern is now some sort of big wig political strategist. And I remember when we were walking out of the prison. He turned to me and he said, "That's not what I expected." And it's not. It's not what anybody expects, but it is a reality of working with human beings. The call for such social justice is as urgent as ever. Systemic inequalities persist in many forms, including racial discrimination, gender inequality, economic disparity, environmental injustice. At the Southern Center, we see injustice every single day, from abominable prison and jail conditions to abhorrent police brutality. But in our work, we also meet people who are brave. We meet people like a young man in solitary confinement in Georgia who risked his safety to tell his truth in our class action lawsuit. As I watched his video testimony, I was struck by his youth. He was a man who was barely more than a boy. And I watched his eyes, and I listened to him tell his story, and he seemed nervous, afraid even. Yet he was determined to tell his truth. This young man was telling his story of horrors that should only exist in nightmares, but were very, very real for him and for too many others who were incarcerated in that prison. And he told of being placed in freezing cold solitary confinement cell, stripped naked, and forced to endure the stench of a broken toilet with human waste and flies, no mattress, no blanket, nothing. Just him on a dark, cold slab in filth for days. This young man and many others told their stories of being horribly mistreated, knowing full well that they could face extreme punishment from officers in retaliation. And yet, they risked their safety to try to make things better. In our work, we meet people who experience redemption. In December 1979, Esther was convicted of first-degree murder of her son, her infant son. She also shot her daughter, Henrietta. Thankfully, Henrietta survived. Esther was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite being sentenced to a term that, by definition, was hopeless, Esther spent her decades in prison focused singularly on rehabilitation. While in prison, she blossomed, taking classes and becoming so respected that she was selected to be on an advisory council, serving as a liaison between people incarcerated and the prison administration. Critically, she also spent decades reckoning with and taking responsibility for her crime. She never made excuses for her actions, but she reflected deeply on the social and personal circumstances that provided the backdrop to the offense: debilitating poverty, an inability to feed her children, and severe trauma. Many years into her sentence, she also received a surprise visit from her daughter, Henrietta, a turning point in her life and the beginning of a relationship the two would rebuild over the course of Esther's decades in prison. Henrietta was her mom's biggest cheerleader, and once she learned that her mother had the opportunity at freedom, Henrietta was there at her resentencing hearing, testifying in support of her mother's return home. After serving 43 years in prison, Esther was freed. 2 days later, she celebrated her 70th birthday with Henrietta, with whom she now lives. There are people in this room who believe that redemption is possible, and whose legacy will be that they use their talents to create new beginnings. Despite injustice, we meet people who are determined, like Mrs. Turner, a former teacher and mother incarcerated in Georgia who was desperately trying to get released so that she could take care of her 3-year-old daughter who was born in prison, who had been passed around from foster home to foster home, who was battling cancer in her tiny little 3-year-old brain. A little girl who wondered why her mommy couldn't kiss her and hug her and tell her everything would be all right. The love that Miss Turner and her daughter shared transcended the stone walls that separated them. And in February of this year, we were able to help her regain her freedom. Miss Turner is now back with her daughter, and who's lovingly painted her room with flamingos, which was the first animal that she saw when they took a trip to the zoo, and she just didn't want to leave those flamingos. We meet people who are resilient. Women like those who give birth while incarcerated and receive little to no postpartum care, forced to remain in soiled clothing, and in at least one case, forced to remove infected stitches with a toenail clipper. These women survived despite the prison creating conditions that made survival nearly impossible. They kept going despite being ripped from their children and made to feel worthless. Injustice abounds. But as the story of the people we serve demonstrate, we can overwhelm injustice with love, compassion, mercy, determination, and hope. Some of you, despite tremendous success, haven't had the easiest lives. You fought and you clawed and you scraped your way here and you made a way out of no way. And maybe there's one person who believed in you, a teacher or a member of your church or a coach, and that support helped fuel your fire. I am fully confident that the work that you will do in your career will be to pay that kindness forward and create an easier path for others. And there's some of you or some of us who were born into opportunity. and who recognize the opportunities that they were given and are willing to use their careers to make sure that other people have similar opportunities. You are my kind of people. I'm proud even now to know, because I know that you will channel your care and compassion and concern, your anger and your disgust into advocacy that will change lives. I'm rooting for this team, for this community. I'm rooting for you because I'm rooting for us, for the society that we are trying to build together. We are the ones who see hurt and try to heal. We are the ones who find hopelessness and create hope. We encounter setbacks and use them as setups for success. We love when everything around us pushes hate. We cry and we wipe tears and we find the will to keep moving. We are the brave ones. We are the change makers. We are the society builders. We are the visionaries. We are hope. We are compassion, and we are built for this. I want to encourage you because I know it can sometimes feel lonely. When I was at UVA, we graduated a class of more than 300 people, and only 14 of us chose public interest. I want to encourage you because I know it can feel lonely. Some of your classmates will come back from the summer with brand new cars because they made so much money in the summer clerkships. I want to encourage you because choosing public interest may not always be the easiest decision. But I want you to know and to feel that you are not alone. You are part of something wonderful and magical, and that you, with all of your unique talents, you bring something special to this fight. You are choosing the path that Justice Thurgood Marshall chose. You are choosing the path that Clarence Darrow chose. You are choosing the path that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elaine Jones, Brian Stevenson, and countless others have chosen. You are in good company. In fact, you're in excellent company. And you are choosing to write a story of care and concern for others, and that is a beautiful thing. So, if someone happens to say, as folks have said to me over time, that you're just a public defender, or you're just a legal aid lawyer, or whatever, you can correct them. You can let them know that you're not just anything. You are a defender of the Constitution of these United States. You are a defender of justice. You are a protector of people like my grandmother, who worked all her life as a maid, but who was one of the first Black people to register to vote in Liberty, Mississippi. She was a common person with uncommon courage, and you are a defender of people just like her. And I want you to correct the record when they say, well, why aren't you doing these other things? Because you are doing a powerful thing, a thing that is going to move and improve communities, and you should be very, very proud of that. The legacies that endure most powerfully are those built on the foundations of equity, compassion, and justice. You are choosing to leave legacies that will endure, if not in the canons of history, definitely in the hearts of the people you serve. So I encourage you today to stay the course. Thank you again for inviting me. I really am honored to be here. I'm sad the bookstore closed before I could get all my swag. But I'm so, so proud to see this room filled with so many people who are interested in public service. It's a far cry from when I was here 20 years ago. And I'm just really, really proud and honored to see my university, my law school, support future public interest lawyers in this way. So thank you, Dean, too, for all you do.